Okay. No video? Yeah? Okay. Can I get it wrong? Hi. Bonjour. There's some confusion with regard to a video. I'm not sure whether it's coming or not, but that video isn't that important. I'm very, very, very happy to see you. Thank you for committing your expensive time to listening to me. It's a pleasure and a privilege. I haven't been to Versailles for 20 years. There we go. My name is Kaspar Szymanski. I won't be talking about myself a lot. We have plenty of time today, and I want to make sure this is time well spent. So the only thing I'll be saying about myself is that I used to work for Google Search. That insight, the privilege that I gained during my tenure working at Google is something that, of course, I pass on to my clients. You guys are not my clients yet. Maybe you will be one day. But today, all of the advice, all of the information that I can share with you is free of charge. Oh, by the way, maybe some of you are interested in the slides or the history behind them. If you do, I'll be sharing it on Twitter. This is the Twitter handle, just for you FYI. Surviving SEO disasters. I grew up in the south of Germany. We are famous for being cheap, really, as cost-effective as possible. And the reason for me saying that is because it is much more cost-effective to learn from other people's mistakes rather than making them yourself and having to pay the price and the money. So that's the three cases that we were talking about. And I want to start off with the main reason why. This is the main question, right? Really quick. Why are we talking about that? Purely because that free traffic, please come and join us. That free traffic that is forthcoming from Google and other search engines, but mainly we're talking about Google. That free traffic is not given, right? And it's not, once one had earned a certain level of traffic, it's not given that it will persist. At times, it's possible it will persist for a long time, but fluctuations are normal. If these are merely fluctuations, it's not a big deal, right? But at times, those fluctuations are quite catastrophic. Let's dive right into it. Not really good with that thing. There we go. This is a boring slide. I promise I have only 3 boring slides, and I don't have many slides to begin with. But this is a slide that shows the visibility of the website. And I'm not going to go ahead and embarrass a client or embarrass another organization. So it is not really premium retail website. We changed the domain, so nobody feels bad about it. What you're seeing here is a website that was very successful. Then something happened. It was less successful. Then something happened again. It was much less successful yet. And they did something again at the third blob, and that killed the website, or rather the traffic. So Premium Retail Website is a company that sells jewelry and watches. And this is a real business, brick and mortar, real shops, a multitude of countries in Europe. Business is going really rather well. What they come up with is a migration. All right, I see several faces of people that have faced a migration. A migration doesn't have to be bad. You can do, bless you. You will be able to do a migration much better after this. But a migration is something that happens, right? They had a rather longish domain. They didn't like it so much, so they came up with the idea, let's use a much shorter one that is just going to be more memorable. And they did just that. They bought themselves a new domain and they migrated. So the first thing that happens when there is a migration is that Google has to recrawl the new website, right? For Google, it's a new website. Whether there are redirects or not, it's still a new website. So there will be fluctuations to begin with. And of course, this is a process that takes a lot of time. If you happen to have a website with 10 pages, it's not a problem. If you happen to have 10,000 pages, it's still not a problem. If you happen to have 100 million landing pages, it is a problem. The first thing, and that was really a cardinal issue, a cardinal mistake they didn't do an audit. Now, if you migrate a website, you can do it. But an old website might get away with a lot of stuff that is legacy stuff, and it's still ranking fine. But with the new website, when Google sees these very same signals, they may actually be held against the website. And that is something that you don't know unless you audit the website before. You have to know what you're actually transferring. They didn't do that. That was a very, very bad mistake. So all of the legacy that was there in place, all of the content that was there in place, all of the backlinks that were there in place, everything was pretty much transferred one-on-one. There was 301 redirects introduced. And that also led to the point where the content that used to be in existence on the old website disappeared. It wasn't there, it was soft 404s to begin with, but now they had these soft 404s on the new website. So consequently, the signals, especially the user signals, were catastrophic because those new landing pages were crawled, indexed, and ranking. Now, users would go to those landing pages after finding them for a query that was relevant and ending up on a product that was not available. And that's, of course, terrible because those users would go right back, thereby indicating to Google, this is not what we've been looking for. Now something happened that shouldn't have happened. The domain that they purchased turned out to be a domain that was a trademark, but not their own trademark. The other organizations disputed it. They got really panicky, and they came up with a brilliant yet terrible idea. In a short period of time, they migrated yet again to a used domain that they got at the aftermarket. So the next thing that happened, of course, was a new recrawl, because that was yet another website. Everything going down yet again, everything being slowed down yet again. And of course, they didn't check whether there was a penalty in place on the website. Penalty, Google refers to that as a manual spam action, something that can be revoked, something that can be fixed. But you happen to use an old domain that has a lingering penalty. Obviously, that's not going to go well, right? At that point, obviously, the organization was in disarray. That was the point in time when something happened that is not very common in the SEO industry. Yet they did do that. Because they were a brick-and-mortar business, they decided, you guys know what? Because we already have a sales organization in the respective country, let the local sales organization take care of the online sales individually. So the UK web guys would take care of the UK website. And the Swiss guys would take care of the Swiss side. And the French guys over the French side and Germans over the German side. That in itself would have been a very, very terrible idea because it becomes completely disorganized, completely decentralized. But the culture in the company itself was a factor because people really, it's not that they didn't like each other, they didn't even talk to each other. They disliked each other so much that everybody was doing whatever the hell they wanted. And the result was that the infrastructure and the architecture and the whole website looked like just like that. Right? Everybody was doing the link building they wanted, and everybody was using the CMS they wanted, and it was a chaos, real chaos. The result, of course, was a complete nosedive, and something that was completely avoidable, and a dead end, really. I always keep saying there is no such situation that cannot be undone, but that really was just too much to be undone in a short period of time. That was catastrophic. Now, rather than just telling you guys what had happened and what should have been avoided, I also want to give you something that is a takeaway. So one thing that I strongly recommend is, of course, self-serving. As a service provider, of course, we have to say that. But if you think about it, most of you will have a car, right? And most of you would bring that very same vehicle at least once a year for a checkup. Website is kind of similar because it's a vehicle that drives your revenue. So you have to check on it on a regular basis. Once per year is very good. Definitely before you do that migration. Because at that point in time, you need to know what's happening before you transfer those signals. And I hate to say that, but SEO is not a democracy. It's more like Formula One. Any Formula One fans here? It's not really popular in France. Okay, we're going to be talking about something else but SEO later. At least one person. So Formula One, right? There is one or two drivers. Typically, there's like one major driver and the guy that's fetching the water. And there's a large team around it and team principle. It's not a democracy. It's not that everybody does whatever the hell they want. It's a team principle deciding what's happening. And that's what needs to be done with SEO, because it's such a large organization, interdisciplinary work that is being done, where we have the developers, we have the link builders, we have the content builders, we have the marketing team, we have the PR team. All of these people contribute. Now, if they don't pull in the same direction, the chaos is the result. That's another boring slide. Well, it's boring only if you don't know what happened behind it. So we're looking at journeycompareheaven.com. Again, not a real website. We are not here to embarrass other people. And if you don't see the numbers in detail, that's not a big problem. The green bar is the volume of indexable landing pages that are good, that are desirable, that this website wanted to have in place, indexed, recrawled, and ranking. The gray bar is the volume of landing pages they eventually created. Anybody here familiar with crawl budget? That's a crawl budget story. So journeycompareheaven.com, we're talking pre-2020, travel industry, beautiful time, business going really good. Yeah, overnight it won't look like that for them. So they had a really good business model. They were in a couple of markets, and they thought we were doing really good. What's the next thing that you do when you do really good? You want to do better. You want to get a bigger market share, right? And their idea was fairly straightforward. We are already good in several markets, several language markets. Let's translate the website in other languages, right? More users, more relevant content. It was the first mistake, by the way, because they translated the content. You don't translate content. What do? You localize, thank you. Exactly, I'm preaching to the converted. If you just translate content, the quality is going to suffer. It doesn't matter which tool you're using. So overnight, they translated into 5 more languages, right? So the volume of landing pages pretty much increased by 5-fold overnight. Now, given a couple of hundred landing pages is not a big deal. Even a couple hundred million landing pages is not a big deal if you still have the content, right? However, these guys thought more is better. So they decided to open up filtering for indexing. So every version of every offer and every variation of that single offer became a separate landing page. So let's think about physical product, let's think about a phone, several colors, right? You have one phone, one iPhone. You have every single color of that iPhone, every single version of that iPhone in terms of hardware, every single one combined with that color again, it multiplies. It gets completely out of control. So what happened to these guys was really an avalanche of landing pages. At that point, it was becoming difficult to understand how many landing pages they have that search engines are seeing. That in itself would have been problematic, but they didn't have canonicals in place yet. Now, canonicals is a way of telling search engines, I do have 10,000 landing pages that look kind of similar, but that one is the one I care for. All of these 10,000 landing pages will be crawled, but Google will be ranking just that one if you do it right. They didn't have that in place. So Google was at liberty to pick and choose which website or which landing page is right for any given query. The next thing that happened was great cannibalization. Now, if you're in the travel industry, and I'm happy to talk to the folks that are in the travel industry later, they are some of my best clients. If you're in the travel industry, you know it's very, very competitive. Corona or no Corona is super competitive, right? You're already competing against those top guys out there. If you now are in the position that for any given query, you're not just competing with these guys, but also with 1 million landing pages of your own website, you're not making the job easier for yourself. The next problem really was the content and the crawl budget. Because the website became so big, Google was like, okay, no, we're not going to crawl the whole thing every day, because it's a little bit too much. And we are in the travel industry, so the offers weren't being crawled in time. So by the time that the landing page was ranking and actually seen by users, when the user clicked on it, that offer was gone, right? Because it hasn't been crawled in a long time. It was already expired at that point in time. which of course led to users going, this is not, this is not the Barcelona trip I was looking for, it's sold out, or the hotel I was looking for, it's sold out. So I'm just going to go back and thereby indicate to Google, not a good result, not a good user experience, effectively killing user signals and effectively dropping the site. These guys were doing one thing as well, which 9 out of 10 people in this room do as well. Look around you. I'm not going to ask it because it's mean to all the other people. But roughly every 10th person, their organization is saving and preserving server logs. 9 other people don't. And having your server logs saved and preserved over an extended period of time allows you to understand how search engines understand your website, what search engines prioritize, how does my website react to search engines to begin with. If you don't have it, there is no way of recovering it. If you haven't recorded server logs today, there is no way you can recover it. So if you forget everything I've been talking about, if you're actually thinking about the delicious cakes downstairs and you really want to go, and there's just one thing you're going to remember from the whole presentation that is going to serve you really, really well, is thinking of server logs and asking back when you get back to the office, are we actually saving and preserving server logs? And there might be 2 things that your team will be telling you. It's too expensive. That's what the Germans do. I'm German. I can crack jokes at the expense of Germans all day long. It's okay. So German teams would be like, it's way too expensive. You're kidding? Hard drives cost nothing, and you can zip the whole thing. So it's perfectly fine. And the next thing, that's again, the German team would be like, let me ask the legal team. The legal team definitely is going to say no. Yes, it's legal. It's your own server logs. It's the anonymized server logs. You don't care for the user entries. You only want to understand when bots crawl your website and what the responses are. So it's perfectly legal, and it's cheap as well. It is recommended. These guys didn't have it. There is a happy ending to this story. It took a very long time, but it was possible to recover the site. This is the long road they went. Obviously, crawl budget had to be mitigated. Obviously, the bits and pieces of the website, the large chunk of the website, had to be de-indexed, but it could be done. Takeaways. I kind of already expanded that one already. Please go ahead, love your server logs, save and preserve your server logs. If you start today, you won't be able to use them today or tomorrow or in a week's time. But if you start today, in 6 months, definitely in 12 months' time, you will have a treasure trove of data that you can tap into and make your website so much better for your own benefit. And more is not better. Having more landing pages is not necessarily a way to rank better. Most of the time, in my experience, it's actually the opposite. If you have fewer but higher quality landing pages, most of the time you rank better. You don't want to rank for content, for queries where you can't provide anything. So you want to make sure you rank for stuff where you actually have an offer where you can monetize. And last but not least, let's talk about medicinemakeshappy.com. I'm not very good in picking and choosing those domain names, am I? Well, I had to pick and choose something, right? So this is the third, and in my book, not so exciting graph or slide. It shows link growth. Any link builders here? I know one of the other speakers is about link building, so he would love that slide and a story. So medicinemakeshappy.com were building links. They were not building it themselves. They were focusing on getting the website better and the product. So they had an agency working for them. And the agency would do everything. They would do the PR, the link building, and so far and so forth. They were doing it really rather good, right? Business was really, really good, and the idea behind it was the same as in the previous story. We already have a market share, and we have budget, and the guys are doing it good. Let's just increase the budget and do better. So they already had a legacy of link building, which was undocumented. This is an important part. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And they decided, we're doing it on a small scale, let's increase the scale. So this is representative for the slight increase they did, knowing full well that this is kindling with fire, right? Because there is no doubt about it, building page rank passing links, this is a Google Webmaster Guideline violation, so something that can get you in trouble. It can work, but it can get you in trouble as well. And it worked. It worked really well. It's good that you're back. This is for you. It's mean, right? I mean, he's the next speaker, but He's a speaker. He's used to people staring at him. So it was working. It kept working. And the management decided, you know what, let's increase it, because we can increase those budgets, so let's increase it really proper, right? Let's make real money. Which massively increased the links, and it still worked, so they decided, let's pour real money on the whole thing. Let's build links like, you know, like in Poland, if you need 100 million backlinks, not a problem, 24 hours, done. I do not recommend that course of action. Yeah, so that's how it ended, obviously. So they increased the volume of backlinks that were being built. And of course, that is something that led to Google's reaction, because this is a Google Webmaster Guideline violation. Now Google Search Essentials. I'm old school. I prefer Google Webmaster Guidelines. And essentially, this is spam. This is something Google considers a black hat method. So they were penalized. Google calls that a manual spam action. At that point, the relationship with the agency soured a little, because that's not what they wanted to happen, obviously. And the problem that was in place was that they didn't have any documentation in place, right? Now, if you happen to have an agency that's working for you building links, no judgment being passed, make sure that you amend the contract and ask them to record and document everything, and preferably ask them to remove the links on demand. They're not going to be willing to do the last part, because most of the times there is no way of doing that. But if you at least have the documentation, you are in a much better place if you need to remove those links, if you need to deal with those links. So the next step was the reconsideration request, which is a process to get back into Google's good grace. And they did just that. They did, however, have to do a link audit, because they didn't have the documentation. And the link audit is swiftly done if you happen to have 100,000 backlinks, or even 500,000 backlinks. That's rather swiftly done. If you have 40 billion backlinks, that takes time. And this is the time that your website isn't ranking. So that's something to be mindful of. This is a risk. These guys had one thing really in their favor: the unique selling proposition. When applying for a reconsideration request, of course, you have to say what you've done. You actually have to improve the situation. You have stopped doing the stuff that Google doesn't like. But at the same time, if you can actually tell, look, guys, we have a unique selling proposition. This is a service that is really worthwhile for the users. That's a big plus. And they did have a unique selling proposition. So that was very much in their favor. So a couple more takeaways. And I have backup questions just in case you guys are shy, but I hope you're not. So build links. And the next thing that happens, somebody's going to tweet, ex-Googler says build links. Fine. There's no such thing as bad PR. Build links for traffic, right? Why are we building PageRank passing links to begin with? We're buying those links, or we're building those links so that our website ranks better, so we can get more visibility, so that we eventually have more conversion. How about skipping the middleman? Build links, but for traffic only. They don't have to pass any PageRank. The idea is to be in the right place in the right time. I have a blueprint for that. If you want, happy to share on Twitter or otherwise. There's a very cool article about building links in a way that Google doesn't frown upon it. Any penalty can be lifted, really. There is no such thing. There's no situation that is absolutely hopeless. So if you happen to be in such a situation that your website isn't performing, whether it's a penalty or it's an algorithmic issue, don't give up. It can be done. If you can't get it done internally, get third-party help. There's a lot of competent people out there that can help you. Do not change domain straight away, because I've seen that happen as well, right? A perfect brand, a very good domain, they get a penalty or whatever is happening, that something they don't like, and they change domains. Like, guys, that's a nuclear option. It's going to be much, much more difficult to recover from that. And I think this is a very important one. This is the last kind of slide that I want to share with you. Very often, when we work with large organizations, they are very hesitant to make serious change. The websites tend to be very large, historically grown. There is a lot of legacy. Now, for a C-level manager, there's a lot of risk if they have to change something significantly, right? It can go south. It can take more than a quarter, and most of the time they think in terms of quarters. it can take more than a quarter to actually benefit from it. So they're hesitant to do it. Now, the moment that the shit hits the fan, that the website is already down really bad, everybody goes like, okay, fine, do whatever you want, right? So it can be an opportunity to introduce all the changes that should have been introduced a long time ago. It can be an opportunity to grow. Frequently, it is. Not grow to the same level as before, way above that, sky being the limit. This is a short URL. This was a very short story of those 3 cases. There is much more if you want to read it up. Go ahead. I will be sharing it later. Take a photo. You name it. Now, I'm perfectly happy to keep this slide here for as long as you need to remember the domain. But I'll be happier yet to address your questions. And I have backup questions, but I'll be perfectly happy to address your questions. We don't have to talk about your websites. We can talk about your friends' websites. That's cool? And if you're totally shy and you don't want to do it in public, I'll stick around. But other than that, I'm all yours. Thank you. Anybody? Other than that, we can break the ice. I'm not done quite yet.
Il fonctionne celui-là. Ouais. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions?
Oh, thank you, sir. Very much appreciated.
Thank you for your presentation. Very insightful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you were about the first story. You were talking audit first, audit of the old website to migrate.
Yes.
To be sure not to migrate legacy discrepancies to the new website.
So, if you want to migrate, and migration can be many things, right? You can be combining, you can combine 2 or several websites. Thank you. You can be changing the content management system, the CMS. You can be changing the URL structure. You can be migrating to a new domain. All of these things effectively are a migration. This is a new pattern for Google, right? So when you do that, you're much better advised to actually figure out what's happening. So to audit the website first. Check, for instance, if there's any technical issues that will be holding your site back, whether there's any canonical issues, whether there's any backlink legacy that you don't want to be associated with the new website, before actually migrating. If you do it the other way around, it can go well. I see that happen, but more frequently, I see actually this going really south, because every grown website has some legacy. It doesn't matter whether there was black hat SEO being done previously or not. It is simply that every large website or every website that has been in existence for a long time includes some technology that may be outdated. It can include content that used to be great, but nowadays it's not so good anymore. It doesn't work for me anymore, right? And it most definitely will have some websites, some websites linking to it, so some backlinks that are not in our best interests. So my advice really is do it at least once a year that you audit the website, but before a migration, before a major change, most definitely, and plan and factor time in advance, because if your site is large, it can actually take a lot of time to conduct the migration, to conduct the audit before the migration. So not just, not just calling your consultant and saying, oh, in 2 weeks we're migrating, do the audit. It's probably a bit more than that, a little bit more run-up. I think 6 months would be more comfortable. But at least, several weeks in advance would be the absolute minimum, because at some point in time, you'll also be taking decisions internally and setting deadlines internal that are very difficult to push over in case you push out if you need to. Thank you for breaking the ice. The first question. Thank you very much. We have more questions. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
I know that ideally we want to have as much time as possible to set up everything's right, but want to ask you if you've been in a situation where you were just looped in at the very last minute or after the fact, and what have been the efforts or initiatives that you put in place to resolve the situation?
So the question is basically, it already happened, the migration already happened, and you're being looped in, and you're being pushed the responsibility in your lap,
Exactly. They mess it up, and then they call you after the fact to try to
May
fix it.
I say here in this safe environment that you're totally screwed at that point in time? Because somebody else did something that you had no control over, and whether whether this is this business, this kind of business or SEO or something else, you didn't do it, and now you are supposed to take over the responsibility. At that point in time, you can monitor, of course, what's happening, but it's too late to change anything. You probably have to wait and see, kind of being the passenger rather than the pilot of the whole situation. I'm sorry to hear that this is happening, but in fact, yes, more frequently than not. Most of the time, it's like the SEO manager being hired, and at the same time, things are changing. They are being onboarded, and bang, right? It will take time. And then your job is to get the message across to the C-level management that, you guys know what? SEO doesn't work on quarters or the way you want it to work. It works the way search engines want it to work. So you will have to allow a little bit more time. And at times, we are in a position where we can provide you the arguments, but you have to slug it out internally. I know it's not comfortable. Please, go ahead. And thank you for your question.
Hi.
Hi.
I would like to know how Google does see if you do a migration, right? And then afterwards, so CMS and domain name, and 1 year afterwards, you realize that it was not a good idea to change the domain name, and you go back to your old, previous domain name.
So you're migrating first, and then you're reverting the process.
Exactly. How Google sees this back and forth ping-pong thing?
It can work, of course, if it's done correctly, if there is no legacy issues that are holding us back, that can very well work. But most of the time, it's, of course, rather really confusing. And it's not that it's not allowed or it's, it's at best, I would call it maybe poor practice to go back and forth, right? Because that's like, you're moving to one house, you don't, and then you don't like it so much, so you're leaving it and going back to the old house. It's kind of a lot of resources expanded without benefits, if you want. It can go well, but it's not an ideal scenario. I presume you have done it, right? You're in the process of doing it? You already survived it. I would warmly recommend not to replicate the experience if you can avoid it. But Google doesn't penalize for something like that. It's just that the signals are changing back and forth. Thank you. More questions?
Ouais, on a le temps pour d'autres questions, si jamais. De l'autre côté, non?
That audience is perfectly fine with English. Other than that, we can also... Oh, no, we have a gentleman over there. Thank you.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
A client of mine has launched 5 new languages on his website, and it's a lot. So what can he do to do it well?
So a client of yours has expanded into a new language market.
5 new languages.
And it's also, this is just like my second example. You must have liked that one, right?
A little bit.
May I ask how many landing pages there are, roughly? Just give me a ballpark. 100 million or significantly more?
1,000.
1,000. So crawl budget should not be a big issue, right? Because 1,000 landing pages is always going to be crawled in no time. That having said, if you're expanding into a new market, you want to make sure it really is, the look and feel is really local. That makes a big difference. Most of the time what I see when these processes are being done, it's like, let's do it cost efficiently, so we're just going to auto-translate most of the time. And then we're going to review it manually at some later point in time, which never happens. It really never, ever really happens. And those new landing pages, at times, the wording, it's the right words and the right language, yes, but it does not feel like it's something that you would be saying in French, and I would be saying in German. Yes. So this is at times problematic. I would not be, without seeing your client's website, without seeing the data, I would tell you 1,000 landing pages is not a problem. 100,000 landing pages I would be more concerned about. 100 million, we'd like, okay, let's, that's something to be really careful with. But 1,000 landing pages is going to be crawled in no time.
And one more trouble, it didn't translate URLs. So
that doesn't matter.
Okay.
No, that's the URL is just a URL. It's just something Google sees. Okay, this this is something I have to crawl. But whether you have the keyword, you don't have the keyword, of no consequence.
Thank
It's
you.
better if you have breadcrumbs, right? Because if you happen to have breadcrumbs, it improves navigation. It looks nicer in the snippets, in the search. So breadcrumbs is always good, but whatever the URL says, doesn't matter.
Je pense que c'est bon. Il y a la question pour la tasse.
Do we still have time, by the way?
Qui parle bien anglais pour demander la question pour la tasse? Là, ça va être fini. Il faut la question pour le mug, mais je questionne for
yes,
the mug.
no, maybe. The mug question? I'm keeping the mug. I want to keep it. I got one a couple years back. I want to keep one.
Vous pouvez le garder.
Okay. So one for me, one for you guys. What is the mug question? Do I have to ask a mug question, really? What is the mug question? Okay. Sure. I was about to tell my wife we're going to get 2 of those mugs now. Okay, sure. But I have several questions, actually. So which? So this is a mug question. This is a good one. So.
Le premier qui lève la main.
Who wants to go? Where I grew up in the South. Ladies first. There's a lady over there.
To see the architecture of the website and to do an audit?
Not quite. And as a gentleman, I'm inclined to still give you the mug, but it's a good reminder. The server logs show us what is being. Well, actually, the gentleman maybe knows the answer. I still think the lady should be getting the mug, though. So, may I, sir? What it crawls. What Google prioritizes to, and other search engines, because, like, you know, I'm a big fan of Google, right? If you want, I'm the Google guy. But there is Bing, and even if it's like 2% or maybe 5% of your traffic that you're getting from Bing, it's still money, right? 5% can be still real money. So you want to understand how Bing bought and how Google bought is crawling your site. What is being prioritized? This is very important. And the other thing that's crazy important is to understand how is my website reacting to those queries. Because if it's, for instance, a 200 OK response for your sold out items, that's a soft 404, and you want to know that because it's really, really bad for you, right? Or if, for instance, you have Cloudflare installed and your server is responding most of the time as a 500 response or 5xx response rather than 200 response, then your site seems to be up. But the bots get a negative response and it cannot be recrawled. So having server logs gives us the confidence that we know how the website reacts to Google and other search engine bot queries. And this is very, very important. And I understand I am supposed to be finishing. Yes?
One last question about in the Search Console there is a new parameters with the crawl insights. How we can trust this when we do not have logs?
It's not the same. It's actually a good question. Yeah. Because Google Search Console provides crazy good insights into how Google sees the website, but it's a limited data set. And it says nothing about server logs, right? So it will tell you a little bit about the backlinks that there are. It will show you a couple of those software 4.4s that are in place. It will show you a couple of other issues. But it's a very limited sample. So I always recommend to look into Search Console, factor it in, but only if you have your complete server logs, you can actually understand what was happening in a holistic way to understand the full picture. So warmly recommended. Thank you, guys. You've been wonderful. I love you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Je dois vous tenir au courant que dans la salle Condé, il y a des portes ouvertes pour les SEO Camp. Si jamais, donc c'est pas marqué sur le planning, il me semble. Mais voilà, il y a des portes ouvertes pour les SEO Camp. Et sinon, je vous laisse changer de salle jusqu'à la prochaine conférence.